but there was one game and one player in specific that unquestionably stole all of college basketball's spotlight and headlines on Wednesday. That was Tennessee forward Dalton Knecht, who, of course, everybody knows, a fifth-year player transferred from Northern Colorado. Dalton Knecht against Auburn on Wednesday night. Remember, this was a top 15 matchup. Bruce Pearl returning to Thompson-Boling Arena, so you know it is a wild environment. Tennessee wins 92-84, but the story was this kid, Dalton Knecht, okay? Kid was unbelievable in the midst of a season in which he has been absolutely unbelievable, and I would argue, given the stakes, given the opponent, given the fact that with the win, they are now playing for first place in the SEC at Alabama on Saturday, I think you could argue this was his best performance of the year. 39 points for Dalton Knecht, okay? How about this? 24 in the second half, and cover your ears, producer Matt, who is an Auburn alum. Dalton Knecht outscored Auburn 25-21 over the final 12 minutes of that game. So my stat isn't correct. It was 25 in the second half, 25-21. The Dalton Knecht outscored the Auburn Tigers over the final 12 minutes of the game. So in the same way that Reed Sheppard became a national talking point on Tuesday night, Dalton Knecht became a national talking point on Wednesday. And I want to ask the question because I think it's worth discussing. Why isn't Dalton Knecht getting more conversation about National Player of the Year in college basketball? Should he be? And is there any chance that he can catch Zach Edey as your College Hoops National Player of the Year? I'm not sure it will happen, but I don't think it's out of the question. I do think he deserves more respect. And oh, by the way, I think he has the chance to earn it over these next couple weeks. Now, the question is, why is he not getting more respect? And I will readily admit this. It is because Zach Edey is freaking awesome. Okay, so Zach Edey, last year's National Player of the Year, is back at Purdue for another year. And I think everybody knows Torres has been critical of Purdue, critical of some of the ways that Zach Edey is refereed, but I think in our heart of hearts, we all agree he's a darn good college basketball player. This year, he's actually putting up better stats than a year ago in fewer minutes. 23 points, 12 rebounds. He's playing about a minute and a half less per game than he did a season ago. And so when I credit Dalton Knecht, I also acknowledge, like, that dude, Zach Edey, doing what he's doing for a team that has basically been in the top three all year. They have the head-to-head win over Tennessee. They have a great out-of-conference resume that includes wins over Arizona and whoever. I'm trying to remember everybody else. They beat Marquette and whatever. I get that Zach Edey is deserving right now of that National Player of the Year, and I'll take it a step further. I think there are times where you can be a great player and be great statistically, but you could also argue that somebody else is more valuable to their team in the way that Dalton Knecht is valuable to Tennessee. The problem is I don't think you can argue it in Zach Edey's case. Like, if you take Dalton Knecht off Tennessee, Tennessee's kind of that good Tennessee team that we've seen, but not great. They don't score enough. They're going to struggle, but they're not the same as they are this year. The problem is it's the same argument with Zach Edey. Purdue is certainly not a top three team in the country. They're certainly not a team that most believe can win or compete for a national championship. And I know they got to get to March, and once they get there, we'll see what happens. But I don't think you can argue that Dalton Knecht has more value to his team than Zach Edey. So I get why more people aren't having the conversation. But I also do think it's at least worth having the conversation if he should be higher up and if there's anything he can do over these final few weeks to get there. First off, I do think he should be higher up. And the bottom line remains that it's because he has completely changed who Tennessee is. By the way, hate to brag, you know it's not my style. But you know who called this exact situation? Your boy Torres did back in April when Dalton Knecht committed to Tennessee. Producer Matt, pull up the tweet that I threw up. There it is right there. Dalton Knecht, this is a tweet. This is what I put out on April 21st when Dalton Knecht committed. Dalton Knecht, who was one of the best players in the portal, just committed to Tennessee. You can criticize Rick Barnes for what has happened in the regular season, but he has killed in the portal this week. This is the exact kind of player UT needed. That is Dalton Knecht. And he's the exact kind of player that they needed because, as I said at the time, he is a guy that can get you buckets any given time. And so I said that back in April. And to his credit, he is that guy, and he has completely changed who Tennessee is. I think with Tennessee, the most incredible stat on Tennessee. So, Tennessee, I just said it a minute ago. Any Vol fan listening, you know, any college basketball fan listening, you know, is that through the years, I know Rick Barnes always gets blamed for everything, but they've had a lot of really good teams that were really physical, really tough, but they were as great as they were defensively. Did they have that dude that could get you a bucket when you needed it? There was one year they had Kennedy Chandler, and he was kind of that guy, but he was also like 5'10", a little bit smaller. But Dalton Knecht and his ability to score, to put the ball in the basket, has completely changed who Tennessee is this year. First off, the stats on Dalton Knecht are insane, okay? So just looking at some of the box scores, looking at some of the games that he has had, Dalton Knecht is going into this weekend in the SEC, mind you, one of the toughest conferences in college basketball, 21 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. He's doing it on 41.5% three-point shooting. And if you look at the individual stats, they are that much more impressive. Just look at the stat sheet for this guy, okay? 37 points in a loss at North Carolina, 36 in a win at Georgia, 39 in a win against Florida, 39 on Wednesday night in a win against Auburn. So this guy is putting up absurd stats in one of the toughest conferences. And what stands out to me is that he is doing it as the focal point of every other team's scouting report. It's now March, essentially, as you're listening to this show. There is no sneaking up on anybody in March. He is the focal point of every scouting report. He is getting everybody's best shot, and he's still putting up 25 to 30, and he's doing it within the flow of the offense. 48% shooting from three, 41% shooting from beyond the three-point arc. Heard Jimmy Dykes say it on the broadcast. Jimmy Dykes believes he will be the first American-born player drafted in the NBA this year. I think there might be something to it, and I think this speaks to his National Player of the Year candidacy. Beyond that, as I've said, it fundamentally, him being in the lineup, completely changes who Tennessee is. And I just mentioned it, but it's worth reiterating here. Tennessee was a team that for years, if you could get 75 on them, they couldn't beat you. They couldn't break the 70, 72, 75 mark. Now, there's been years. Last year, there was the injury to Sakai Ziegler, etc. But I just bring it up because there have been years where the secret sauce with Tennessee is they're great defensively, but if you can put the ball in the basket, you can beat them. I found a stat to verify the impact that Dalton Knecht has had, because how about this? In 10 of Tennessee's last 11 games, they have put up at least 80 points. 10 of their last 11 wins, I should say. Why is that impressive? It is because last year, in their final 11 wins, they put up 80-plus points one time, meaning every game was in the 50s and 60s. Look at these final scores. Beat Auburn on Wednesday night, 92-84. Put up 86 on A&M last weekend. Put up 88 against Vandy, 92 at Arkansas, 88 against LSU, 103 at Kentucky. And so this guy has changed who they are, and I believe has elevated them into a legitimate national championship contender. Now, that's where it obviously gets interesting, because anytime anyone like myself says anything nice about Rick Barnes, you already know what happens. Oh, Torres, they stink. Rick Barnes is going to ruin everything. They'll never, ever have success. Well, first of all, the Rick Barnes can't win in March thing is so overblown. 2 of the last 4 NCAA tournaments, he's made it to the second weekend, including last year when he didn't have a starting point guard, okay? So that's one. But 2, when I look at Dalton Knecht, I think he elevates this team. And listen, just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean that it can't happen. And when I look at this Tennessee team, just because they've never made a Final Four, that's fine. I just don't think they've ever had a dude like Dalton Knecht that can carry them. And so I don't think as of today, this second, he is your National Player of the Year. But 2 closing thoughts as I think about this. 1, Tennessee certainly has the schedule to put it in the conversation. If Tennessee goes 3-0 down the stretch, they play at Alabama this weekend, they play at South Carolina, and they play Kentucky to end the regular season. Those are two of those three are super high profile games. And then, of course, there's the SEC tournament. And then usually after the conference tournaments, that's when we do National Player of the Year. If Dalton Knecht blows up, if Dalton Knecht puts up 38 at Coleman Coliseum this weekend and another 32 against Kentucky or 41 against Kentucky and 38 in the SEC championship game, I think he's going to get into the conversation. And I think this is going to be one of those conversations that people look back and say, oh, Torres, you're an idiot. And then you actually see 2-3 weeks later, he is actually in the conversation. The other thing that I think is worth noting, and this is important, I don't think Tennessee fans care very much if Dalton Knecht is National Player of the Year. But if he can, and I say that respectfully, I think Tennessee fans have seen it all at this point. They've seen draft picks, they've seen regular season titles, they've seen SEC tournament titles. And I don't think like winning a National Player of the Year is going to do much to excite the Tennessee fan base. But what I will also say, if Dalton Knecht can get Tennessee to their first ever Final Four, tell you what, that goes from who cares if he won the National Player of the Year to an all-time program legend if he isn't already. So I think it's at least worth discussing. But at the same time, Dalton Knecht, it's time to, I think, have the conversation. If he's not in the National Player of the Year conversation, I think that he should be.